All right, welcome back. Full Dark No Stars, episode 3. We're on page 17. Let's go ahead and not talk too much. Let's get right into it. Let it be told quickly. On the nights where I can't sleep, and there are many, it plays over and over again. Every thrash and cough and drop of blood in exquisite slowness. So let this be told quickly. We went into the bedroom, me in the lead with the butcher's knife in my hand, and my son with the burlap sack in his. We went on tiptoe. Hell, we could have come in there clashing cymbals without waking her up. That was neither here nor there. I motioned Henry to stand to my right next to her head. Now we could hear the Big Ben alarm clock ticking on their nightstand as well as her snores. And a curious thought came to me. We were like physicians attending the deathbed of an important patient. But I think physicians at deathbeds do not as a rule tremble with guilt and fear. Please let there not be too much blood, I thought. Let the bag catch it. Even better, let him cry off now at the last minute. But he didn't. Perhaps he thought I'd hate him if he did. Perhaps he had resigned her to heaven. Perhaps he was remembering that obscene middle finger, poking a circle around her crotch. I don't know. I only know he whispered, "Goodbye, Mama," and drew the bag down over her head. She snorted and tried to twist away. I had meant to reach under the bag to do my business, but he had to push down tightly on it to hold her, and I could not. I saw her nose making a shape like a shark's fin in the burlap. I saw the look of panic dawning on his face, too, because he knew he couldn't hold the bag for too long. I put one knee on the bed and one hand on her shoulder. Then I slashed through the burlap and the throat beneath. She screamed and began to thrash in earnest. Blood welled the slit in the burlap. Her hands came up and beat the air. Henry stumbled away from the bed with a screech. I tried to hold her. She pulled at the gushing bag with her hands, and I slashed at them, cutting 3 of her fingers to the bone. She shrieked again, a sound as thin and sharp as a sliver of ice, and the hand fell away to twitch on the counterpane. I slashed another bleeding slit into the burlap, and another and another. 5 cuts in all I made before she pushed me away with her unwounded hand and then tore the burlap sack up from her face. She couldn't get it all the way off her head. It had caught in her hair, and so she wore it like a snood. I had cut her throat with the first 2 slashes. First time deep enough to show the gristle of her windpipe. With the last 2 I had carved her cheek and her mouth. The latter so deeply that she wore a clown's grin. It stretched all the way to her ears and showed her teeth. She let loose a guttural, choked roar. The sound a lion might make at feeding time. Blood flew from her throat all the way to the foot of the counterpane. I remember thinking it looked like the wine when she held her glass up to the last of the daylight. She tried to get out of bed. I was first dumbfounded, then infuriated. She had been a trouble to me all the days of our marriage, and was even a trouble now. At our bloody divorce. But what else would I have expected? "Father, make her stop," Henry shrieked. "Make her stop, Father, make her stop. For the love of God, make her stop." I leaped on her like an ardent lover and drove her back down on her blood-drenched pillow. More harsh growls came from deep in her mangled throat. Her eyes rolled in their sockets, gushing tears. I wound my hand into her hair, yanked her head back, and cut her throat once more. Then I tore the counterpane free from my side of the bed and wrapped it over her, catching all but the first pulse from her jugular. My face had caught that spray, and hot blood now dripped from my chin, nose, and eyebrows. Behind me, Henry's shrieks had ceased. I turned around and saw that God had taken pity on him, assuming he had not turned his face away when he saw what we were about. He had fainted. Her thrashings began to weaken. At last she lay still. But I remained on top of her, pressing down with the counterpane, now soaked with her blood. I reminded myself that she had never done anything easily, and I was right. After 30 seconds, the tinny mail-order clock counted them off. She gave another heave, this time bowing her back so strenuously that she almost threw me off. "Ride on me, cowboy," I thought. Or perhaps I said it aloud. That I can't remember. God help me, everything else, but not that. She subsided. I counted another 30 tinny ticks, then 30 after that for good measure. On the floor, Henry stirred and groaned. He began to sit up, then thought better of it. He crawled into the farthest corner of the room and curled into a ball. Henry, I said. Nothing from the curled shape in the corner. Henry, she's gone. She's gone and I need your help, son. Nothing still. Henry, it's too late to turn back now. The deed is done. If you don't want to go to prison and your father to the electric chair, then you get on your feet and you help me. He staggered toward the bed. His hair had fallen into his eyes. They glittered through the sweat-clumped locks like the eyes of an animal hiding in the bushes. He licked his lips repeatedly. Don't step in that, as I gestured to her life force flowing out around us. We've got more of a mess to clean up in here than I wanted, but we can take care of it. If we don't track it all through the house, that is. Do I have to look at her father? Do I have to look? No, neither of us do. We rolled her up, making the counterpane her shroud. Once it was done, I realized we couldn't carry her through the house this way. In my half-planned and daydreamed, I had seen no more than a discreet thread of blood, marring the counterpane where her neatly cut throat, lay beneath. I had not foreseen or even considered the reality. The white counterpane was a blackish purple in the dim room, oozing blood as a bloated sponge will ooze water. There was a quilt in the closet. I couldn't suppress a brief thought of what my mother would think if she could see what I was using of that lovely stitched wedding present. But I couldn't worry about that now. I laid it on the floor. We dropped our lead onto it. Then we rolled her up. Quick, I said. Before this starts to drip too. No. Wait. Go for a lamp. He was gone so long that I began to fear he'd run away. Then I saw the light come bobbing down the short hall past his bedroom into the one Arlette and I shared. Had shared. I could see the tears gushing down his waxy pale face. Put it on the dresser. He sat the lamp down by the book I had been reading, Sinclair Lewis's Main Street. I never got to finish it. I could never bear to finish it. By the light of the lamp, I pointed out the splashes of blood on the floor, in the pool of it right beside the bed. Moira's running out of the quilt, he said. If I'd known how much blood she had in her. I shook the case free of my pillow and snugged it over the end of the quilt like a sock over a bleeding shin. Take her feet, I said. We need to do this part right now. And don't faint again, Henry, because I can't do this by myself. I wish it was a dream, he said. But he bent and got his arms around the bottom of the quilt. Do you think it might be a dream, Father? Well, think it is. Think about when it's a year from now, when this is all behind us. Look forward to that. Part of me genuinely believed this. Quickly now, I said, before the pillowcase starts to drip, or the rest of it on the quilt. We carried her down the hall, across the sitting room, and out through the front door like men carrying a piece of furniture wrapped in a mover's rug. Once we were down the porch steps, I breathed a little easier. Blood in the dooryard could easily be covered over. Henry was all right. Well, that wasn't until we got around the corner of the cow barn and the old well came into view. It was ringed by wooden stakes so no one would by accident step onto the wooden cap that covered it. Those sticks looked grim and horrible in the starlight. And at the sight of them, Henry uttered a shrill cry. That's no grave for a mama. He managed that much, and then fainted into the weedy scrub that gave way behind the barn. Suddenly I was holding the dead weight of my murdered wife all by my lonesome. I considered putting the grotesque bundle down, its wrappings now all askew and the slashed hand peeking out, long enough to revive him. I decided it would be more merciful to let him lie. I dragged her to the side of the well, put her down, and lifted up the wooden cap. As I leaned it against two of the stakes, the well exhaled directly into my face, a stench of stagnant water and rotting weeds. I fought with my gorge and lost, holding on to two of the stakes to keep my balance. I bowed at the waist to vomit my supper and the little wine I had drunk. There was an echoing splash when it struck the murky water at the bottom. That splash, like thinking riding a cowboy, has been within hand's reach of my memory for the last 8 years. I will wake up in the middle of the night with that echo in my mind and feel the splinters of the stakes dig into my palms as I clutch them, holding on for dear life. I backed away from the well and tripped over the bundle that had held Arlette. I fell down. The slashed hand was inches from my eyes. I tucked it back into the quilt and then patted it, as if comforting her. Henry was still lying in the weeds with his head pillowed on one arm. He looked like a child sleeping after a strenuous day during harvest time. Overhead, the stars shone down in their thousands and tens of thousands. I could see the constellations, Orion, Cassiopeia, the Dippers, that my father had taught me. In the distance, Cottery's dog Rex barked once and then was still. I remember thinking, this night will never end. And that was right. In all important ways, it never had. I picked the bundle up in my arms and it twitched. I froze, my breath held in spite of my thundering heart. Surely I didn't feel that, I thought. I waited for it to come again, or perhaps for her hand to creep out of the quilt and try to grip my wrist with the slashed finger. But nothing. Yeah, I had imagined it. Surely I had. And so I tucked her down the well. I saw the quilt unravel from the end, not held by the pillowcase, and then came the splash, a much bigger one than my vomit had made. But there was also a squelchy thud. I'd known the water down there wasn't deep, but I'd hoped it would be deep enough to cover her at the very least. That thud told me it absolutely wasn't. A high siren of laughter commenced behind me, a sound so close to insanity that it made my goose flesh prickle all the way from the crack of my backside to the nape of my neck. Henry had come to and gained his feet. No, much more than that. He was capering behind the cow barn, waving his arms at the star-shot sky and laughing. Mama down the well and I don't care, he sing-songed. Mama down the well and I don't care, for my master's gone away. I reached him in 3 strides and slapped him as hard as I could, leaving bloody fingerprints on a downy cheek that hadn't yet felt the stroke of a razor. Shut up. Your voice will carry, boy. You're... There, fool boy. You've raised the goddamn dog again. Rex barked again. Once, twice, 3 times, then silence. We stood, me grasping Henry's shoulders, listening with my head cocked. Sweat ran down the back of my neck. Rex barked once more, then stopped. If any of the Cotterys roused, they'd think it was a raccoon he'd been barking at. Or so I would hope. Go in the house, I said. The worst is over. Is it, Papa? He looked at me solemnly and asked, Is it? Yeah. Yeah. Are you all right? Are you gonna faint again? Did I? Yeah. Yeah, you did. I'm all right. I just don't know why I laughed like that. I was confused because I'm relieved. I guess it's over. A chuckle escaped him and he clapped his hands over his mouth like a little boy who had inadvertently said a bad word in front of his grandma. Yeah, I said. It's over. We'll stay here. Your mother ran away to St. Louis. Or perhaps it was Chicago. But we'll stay here. She, his eyes straight on the well, and the cap leaning against 3 of the stakes that were somehow too grim in the starlight. Yes, Hank, she did. His mother hated to hear me call him Hank. She said it was common, but there was nothing she could do about it now. Up and left us cold, and of course we're sorry, but in the meantime, chores won't wait, nor schooling. And I can still be friends with Shannon? Of course, I said. And in my mind's eye, I saw Arlette's middle finger tapping its lascivious circle around her crotch. Of course you can. But if you should ever feel the urge to confess to Shannon, an expression of horror dawned on his face. No, not ever. That's what you think now, and I'm glad. But if the urge should come to you someday, remember that she'd run from you. Of course she would, he muttered. Now go in the house and get both wash buckets out of the pantry. Better get a couple of milk buckets from the barn as well. Fill them from the kitchen pump and suds them up with the stuff she keeps under the sink. Should I heat the water? He asked. I heard my mother say in my mind. Cold water for blood, Wilf. Remember that. No need, I said. I'll be in as soon as I've put the cat back on the well. He started to turn away, then seized my arm. His hands were dreadfully cold. No one can ever know, he whispered. This hoarsely look came across his face. No one could Sorry. No one can ever know what we did, I said, sounding far bolder than I felt. Things had already gone wrong, and I was starting to realize that a deed is never like the dream of a deed. She won't come back, will she? What do you mean? She won't haunt us, will she? Only he said, hain't, the kind of country talk that had always made Arlette shake her head and roll her eyes. It is only now, 8 years later, that I had come to realize how much hain't sounds like hate. No, she won't. It'll be okay. I told him this in full confidence, without a shred of doubt in me. But I was wrong. Okay. We're going to call that a stopping point, and we're going to pick back up on the next vid. Thanks. See you next one.